are Infinity X, giving a stage and microphone to human excellence in the infinite pursuit of creating massive sales opportunities for entrepreneurs by giving a stage and microphone to human excellence. Tonight, folks, we are incredibly excited to have Mike Alden on the stage. Mike is an attorney, an entrepreneur, an author, has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the Alden Report podcast. You can find him on YouTube, Mike Alden, and Mike Alden 2012 on Instagram. We are joined tonight by Mike Alden. What's up, Mike? How are you tonight?
I'm fabulous, man. I like I said before, you couldn't hear me. I said it's early, though. I'll get better.
What time is it out where you're at?
It's 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on the dot. What city are you in?
Boston, just north of Boston. I'm actually in Beverly, Massachusetts, the birthplace of the American Navy. So.
Excellent. Is that where you're from originally?
Yeah, it's where I'm from. It's where my business is. It's where I grew up. And a lot of people grow up in towns and areas and they want to leave, but it's a beautiful place. So I really enjoy it there.
Awesome. I've spent a lot of time up there. It is an absolutely gorgeous place. All of New England is incredible. And, I always say that, to know where you're going, you got to know where you're from. So I'd love to hear a little bit of your journey, Mike, like where you grew up and where you went to college and, how you kind of evolved into this megapreneur that you are now.
Yeah. Thanks for asking that. I grew up right here in Beverly, Massachusetts. If you look at Beverly, you see that there's a lot of old money here. Beverly Farms is a beautiful area. In fact, Beverly Hills was founded from a guy from Beverly Farms. So, you think about this area, it's a coastal town, it's beautiful. But I grew up in the projects of Beverly, Massachusetts, surrounded by crime, drugs, and violence. My mom's HIV positive. My stepfather died of AIDS. My father was addicted to coke. I grew up in jail for life for murder. I really wasn't necessarily.
Check your mic real quick, brother. Check your mic. You're a little faded.
That's weird, man. Really, really weird. Can you hear me
now? Just a little bit. Maybe a little, maybe the boom a little closer to your mouth, maybe. No, I don't have it. I'm so sorry, Mike.
There
we go. Nope, got it.
Yeah, but that's not my mic. I'm operating on the computer. I hate that we're live, man. I feel bad.
Don't worry about it, brother. It's all good. We roll with it.
You want to log out and log back in? Does anyone mind who's watching? I can log back out, log back in. This microphone's pretty sick. I just don't know why it's not working.
No, it's I think I can hear you. I can hear you now, Mike. So why don't we just keep rolling with it?
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in a really, really difficult situation, surrounded by crime, drugs, violence. I remember what it was like waking up in the morning and not having, milk for cereal. I remember what it was like to have my lunch subsidized by the state, in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And, I remember what it was like one morning when my mom asked me, she said, "Hey, go outside and warm up the car." And I went out to go look for the vehicle and it wasn't there. And it wasn't because it was stolen, although that happened a lot in my neighborhood. It was because it was repossessed. And that wasn't the first time. And I remember my mom, getting on the phone and begging, with the finance company to get her car back. And so it was a really difficult situation to grow up in. But at the same time, growing up in the area of Beverly, Massachusetts, I was surrounded by rich people, right? Yeah. I was surrounded by middle-class people, the ones that I thought were really rich. But then there were the uber rich, old money, people who's, we hear about generational wealth, like true generational wealth. So it was really an interesting place to grow up because I was able to see the richest of the rich, and then I was a part of the poorest of the poor. So that's kind of like the beginnings of my entrepreneurial, stage. Look, and you hear it all the time. I was, shoveling driveways in the winter, and yep. I was, paper routes and lemonade stands, and then, maybe some things that weren't as above board as they should have been.
Hey, listen, I identify with that in a thank you for your vulnerability there, Mike. I have a million different questions that pop into my mind, because when I was growing up, I didn't have that level of financial challenge, but I grew up in a relatively affluent town where I was absolutely anything but affluent. And I can remember that, you have specific memory. One particular memory for me, I'll share real quick. I don't want to make it about me, but one particular memory was on my I think it was my 13th birthday. We were up in Cooperstown playing a baseball game, and it actually happened to be my birthday, right? And I end up getting the game-winning hit on Doubleday Field on my birthday, right? And I'm so unbelievably excited. And afterwards, in Cooperstown, there's a whole bunch of like memorabilia shops and stuff. And I remember that the kids that had means were able to go in there and buy, anything they wanted. And I remember seeing this one particular jersey that I just fell in love with and I wanted so bad, and, didn't have it, unfortunately. And it was like, things like that can be, they can shape you, they can motivate you, they can drive you. And my question for you, Mike, is, growing up around that, I imagine that you equate it to your entrepreneurial spirit and some of the things that really motivate. Did you notice when that was happening to you that it was a motivator, or did it anger you, or like what was your reaction to that, the environment that you were growing up in?
Boy, a lot of great stuff there. I think it probably angered me. I mean, I was an angry kid when I was a kid. I was a bully. I got into fights all the time. I had issues in school with teachers, and I didn't necessarily know where that anger came from, because when you're growing up poor, I don't know. I mean, I knew I was poor, but I didn't really know how poor I was. And look, and to put it in perspective, there was never a time where I didn't eat. There was never a time when we were actually really homeless. But there were times when we didn't have electricity, and when, the Salvation Army or some other local organization did in fact, donate things, food and clothes and things like that. So, I was pretty poor. I mean, I was at or below the poverty level, but there are much worse situations to grow in. And it's really interesting that you say that too, because, I know that you interview a lot of entrepreneurs here, and I run in circles, obviously, of entrepreneurs. And a lot of them have similar backgrounds and similar stories, right? And we do use that to drive us. And it truly is our gift. But, that moment for you, it stuck with you, right? And so there are moments for me in my life when, like I said, I remember standing in line in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And by the way, my senior year in high school was class president, captain of the football team. So, but up until that point too, I remember standing there and I had this card I had to give people. And I remember being at the grocery store with my mom and having her card, they had bank cards before, they really weren't even true debit cards, having that declined and even not really knowing what that was, and looking in my mom's eyes and remembering that, she had to give this stuff back, and making a decision of, am I going to give back apples or bananas? I mean, it sounds so trivial, but I do remember that stuff. And it's an amazing thing because when you grow up, when you wanting and also needing, because there's a difference between wants and needs, right? But when you grow up with both, and you also grow up under the eyes of people in an area like this where they don't believe you're going to be successful. In fact, they're actually rooting against you, and they tell you. I tell a story that when I was 17 years old, my girlfriend's mother told me I'd be dead or in jail. And you know what? It was because I was talking about how I'd been stabbed, I'd been shot at, I was stealing, I was doing. So she was right. But at the same time, it does drive me. Like, you'd mentioned earlier about where you come from. Look, people make a big mistake and they say, don't forget where you came from. Don't forget where you came from. That's fine. Don't forget where you came from, but don't stay there. Too many people stay there.
Yep.
And I'm always going to be that kid from the projects. I don't look like it now. I sometimes still do act like it, but that's just who I am. And it's always going to be who I am. And it does drive me. I have a chip on my shoulder because I feel like saying fuck you to everybody who told me I wasn't going to be successful. Mm-hmm. And so and when I get, people talk about fear, right? And they say, what are most people afraid of? They're afraid of success, right? Or they're afraid of failure. I'm afraid of both.
Yep.
Right? Because I've been over successful. I've lost pretty much everything before, declared bankruptcy before, had big companies, lost big companies, had millions stolen from me, made millions. I've had all that stuff. So for me, that fear, even though sometimes it doesn't feel good, it's really given me an unfair advantage, because I told my mom this, I wrote an article about this. I said, I'm a great loser. Oh, Michael, what are you talking about? Why would you say something like that? Well, because at the end of the day, the realities of business and entrepreneurship and life, we lose more than we win. And so I grew up losing. I grew up behind the eight ball. I grew up without access to anything. And so I was just talking to my therapist about this. To this day, okay, to this day, I'm not given the first class opportunities. I'm always given the second class opportunities. And so I can be pissed off at that, which I am a lot of times, and not do anything about it and just reject it. Or I could take the opportunities that are given to me, take advantage of them, and exploit them to the greatest possible outcome that's available to me. And then in the very near future, those first class opportunities will in fact be given to me.
Unbelievable. Holy folks, we are Infinity X, stage and microphone with a king right here, folks. This is Mike Alden, and the power of the power of persistency and the power of looking in the mirror or looking in the rear view mirror, but not staring at the rear view mirror is very, very, very real. Don't forget where you came from, but don't consistently stay where you came from. That is, Mike, I've never heard anybody say that before. That's unbelievably powerful. And by the way, to tell you how much I identify with you, and I knew I was going to like you, but I really like you. I got one word for you, and it's target. And what I mean by that is I'll never forget the feeling when the bank card didn't work when I was standing with my mom in the line at Target. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget where I was standing. I'll never forget the feeling of the eyes looking on us. I'll never, ever, ever forget. And you know what? To this day, I love going to Target. Love it. You know, I love it because it's a it reminds me that when I swipe the card, it's going to work.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you this. Do you get nervous that it might decline?
Every single time.
I do too. And, you know, it's crazy. Look, I mean, you know, I had the American Express Platinum card, right? It was unlimited. Okay. Right. So, and you know, we banged that thing $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a month. And I don't have that card anymore, but that's okay. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But I would call my accountant and I'm like, look, I'm going out to dinner with these people. You know, I'm guessing it might be a couple grand, you know, it's kind of a whatever the number was, you know, can you make sure that we have, you know, room on the card? And he'd be like, yeah, sure, make sure. Listen, when I was early on in my career, when we talk about that stuff with the credit cards, I don't think I've ever told this story before. My marriage was essentially over at this time, but I said, you know what, I needed to get out of town. I had a little girl and my ex-wife, and you know, my wife at the time, and I said, look, let's just leave. Let's go. My daughter didn't have a passport; she was little, so I said, let's go to Puerto Rico. Right? Get on a plane, go to Puerto Rico. I charged it on the MX card, and I had nothing. That's all I had for this trip. Right? I had a little bit of cash, but that's all I had. Yeah. We get there. We get to the. See, what people don't realize is they don't hit your card for the whole week on day one when you book it, right? They just, you know, it's usually one for. We get on a plane for my daughter, my wife. We go to Puerto Rico. We get to the hotel, and my card's declining. Oh my God. And I have no other card. Like I have nothing. So I'm in Puerto Rico with my ex-wife that already pretty much hates me anyway at the time. You know, and I don't know what to do. You know, but if you think, but by the way, we didn't get on a plane and go home. So as an entrepreneur, you have to figure things out, and you have to figure them out literally on the fly. And you also have to think about, well, if this doesn't work out, what else can I do? And I actually got American Express and Bank of America on the phone at the same time because I had made the payment. We had made it. It was a huge payment though, right? It was like, I don't know, like 120 grand or something like that. But it was literally just in purgatory, you know? And they're like, all right, cool, we'll let the card clear. So that shit still to this day scares me, man, because it's just I think it's always going to be with you, but at the same time I think it's a gift in a way. It's a weird gift because I don't like anxiety. I don't like fear of you know, not being able to pay for stuff, but at the same time it does, you know, people say as soon when you get comfortable, that's when things start to go wrong. I think that's bullshit. I mean, I would much rather be comfortable than not be uncomfortable, but I think it's just a part of the entrepreneurial life. It's a part of who we are. It's a part of, the process that people talk about, and it's not the planes, the cars, the watches, and the things that people see. It's the stuff behind the scenes that hurts, right? That is necessary. Look, before we even got on this, look, it's 7 o'clock. I'm here in the office. Okay. I was banging. We launched an insurance company. Okay. I'm 47 years old. I'm a licensed attorney. I got licensed 18 years ago. We launched this business. I didn't think I needed to be licensed, but lo and behold, I did. So I had to take the life test. I had to take the health test, which I wasn't excited about doing. I was nervous about not passing. Of course I passed, but you never know. And what was right. I was banging out phone calls before this, calling older leads. Why? Yep. Why would I do this? What's the point? Hey, we get like 60 agents already working for us. Like, why would I do this? Well, because I don't understand the process. I don't know really what it's like. And I'm going to continue to do that until I really get it. So that way there, when I'm talking to agents that have been doing it much longer than me, they're like, all right, this guy gets it. So these are the things that entrepreneurs do that most people aren't posting about on social media, because it's just not sexy. To sit here and go through leads and bang out my phone on a phone call and dial like this is but that's the stuff that we do, and that's what it takes to be successful.
Yep. The devil's in the dirt, man. Absolutely. Folks, we are Infinity X. This is Mike Alden. You can find him, Mike Alden YouTube, 176 podcasts strong, Mike Alden 2012 on Instagram. And Mike, let's listen. I want to get really deep with you on that insurance front, because you really piqued my interest there, brother. I got we got some stories to share here tonight. Buckle your seatbelts, folks. This is going to be a fun conversation. But so you're president of you're president of your high school class, right? You graduate. Where'd you go to school? Well, hey, listen, you made it through, right? But what happened? What happened next, right? You went to you went to college.
I went to Springfield College, and I tell you, I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she's a sophomore, and she's an athlete, and she's doing great. And I talked to her about options. Growing up the way I didn't have a lot of options, but then I also made it worse for myself by not giving myself options academically in the beginning, right? I'm not a stupid person. I just didn't put in the work. And I was just like, I was somewhat of a punk, and the kids I hung out with really weren't going anywhere in life. But, right around my sophomore year, and I tell people this all the time, and it's weird to talk about this at 47 years old, but, there comes a point in someone's life, and it's usually right around that time, the teenage years, where you need to make the decision, not your parents, not your teachers, not your coaches. You need to make the decision whether or not you're going to do something with your life. And I was fortunate that I've told the stories before. I had my father take me for a long walk on the beach one day, and he said, listen, you're doing the wrong things. You're getting in fights. You're stealing things. You're getting in trouble. You're failing. If you're going to do this, right? If you're going to be a punk, if you're going to be a criminal, I know the right people. Like, I can introduce you to actual drug dealers. I can introduce you to actual gangsters, and then you just do it right. You're going to go to jail. You probably die young, but that's just the way. Now, if that's what you want. And I remember you talk about these moments in your life. And so that's when I started to turn my life around to a certain degree. However, I had screwed it up so bad my freshman year, and even in my the first and second quarter of my sophomore year, that to be able to turn it around became very, very difficult. And I talk about that in my book, 5% More. I'm not promoting my book at all, but it's written years ago.
No, promote away, brother. Promote away.
But the thing is that, and I was telling my daughter this, it's those little things that make a huge difference. And so even though my senior year in high school, I was class president, captain of the football team, essentially had straight A's. I graduated with a 1.9 GPA, which is like a C- GPA. I got a 9.10 on the SATs. I looked practically brain dead. However, I was lucky enough that I played sports and played football, and I got into college. I went to Springfield College, the birthplace of American basketball. And when I got in, that's when I said to myself, David, I was like, okay, I'm here. And by the way, it wasn't just me. I did have teachers, and I did have coaches and guidance counselors, and and even politicians that kind of got behind me and gave me letters of recommendation. So once I got in, like, I knew that this was serious business. Like, I just couldn't fuck around. I mean, I fucked around, but I was like, I'm not gonna get thrown out of school. I'm not gonna get kicked out of school. I might have come close a couple times, but my grades were there. And I also knew that I wanted to go to law school. And so I had to learn about really what that meant. At Springfield, it's a big athletic training school, big physical therapy school. And I was one of 9 political science majors, and we all actually became lawyers, all of us.
It's incredible.
But even then, I graduated college with exactly to the like 5th decimal point, a 3.0. Okay?
Ah, so did I. Actually, same thing. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So like, but so like if you start out, with a 2.8 or something like that, to get to like a 3.6 is like almost impossible. And so I was able to get into law school eventually. And then when I got to law school, now it's serious. Now I'm borrowing well, first of all the money I was borrowing anyway in undergrad, but now I'm paying for it all. And I went to Suffolk University here in Boston Nights. It's a great school, especially if you're going to practice law around here. It's one of the only night programs there. And, my classmates, Harvard, MIT, BC, BU, Northeastern, and I'm this kid from Springfield College. I was selling cars, by the way. And everyone else is like PhDs, and they already had their masters, and they were already in the legal field. And everyone introduces themselves, by the way, in this in the first day, one of these classes. And if you've ever been into a law school, a lot of them, it's like stadium style seating. And my law school is what they call, they practice the Socratic method, meaning from Socrates, but they just hammer you with questions. You don't know whether or not you're going to get called on. But anyway, so the first day of class, everyone's introducing themselves. And they say, "Oh, I'm this one. I went to MIT, or I'm a PhD." Like one of the girls in my class, like English was like her 10th language. She was a PhD in like linguistics or something, And I say, "Yeah, I said, my name's Mike, and I sell cars over at North Shore Lincoln Mercury. If anybody needs a car, come see me." The whole place does what you did. I ended up selling 2 cars as a result of that. And I have some of the best friends of my entire life. They'd come up to me and said, "You know what, man, dude, we love you." The whole place started because everyone's like, "Oh, look at me, how awesome I am, blah, blah, blah." Then I graduate law school, and, I was instantly thrown in the fire when I was practicing law. When I say instantly thrown in the fire, the day I started with this company, I was working there as well early on, but they were sued by the FTC, the FDA, the IRS, and then it went criminal. Like, I didn't even have my BBO number yet. So when you sign, pleadings and things like that, you have to put your BBO number on it, right? So I had to put BBO pending, right? And so all my really wicked smart, I'm here for Boston, classmates, they were doing shit. I had to get my federal license expedited because you don't get that automatically. I had to get that expedited because we were in federal court defending a $60 million lawsuit. And by the way, we did. I wasn't the only lawyer involved, but I was a pretty integral part of it. But it was such an amazing experience. And that has led me to kind of where I'm at today, because I learned what not to do in business. Pretty cool.
Holy, and you're sitting there thinking, "Hey, this is a normal day's work, right? This is what it's all about, right?"
I haven't told this story a lot publicly, but when it went criminal, that's public. But I got pulled in to the grand jury. Okay, I had to testify before a grand jury. Now, not too many people have ever had to do that before, so I didn't even know what that was like. And the weirdest part about the whole thing is these government agencies that were really trying to take down my 2 bosses, right? They couldn't figure out me. They couldn't figure out how this street kid, essentially, from a kind of a blue collar law school, was general counsel of a company that was doing like, $100 million a year. And who was I? Like, why was I involved, right? They couldn't figure any of this stuff out. And it's funny, you say, like, so, and when you go into the grand jury, again, people don't know this, you don't have defense lawyers with you, but there's all these other lawyers that are asking you questions, and you're by yourself, right? And it's a weird thing, because as a lawyer, I had answers to questions that I couldn't answer. So it automatically makes you feel like you're lying, right? Because you're like, I know these things. But they were trying to figure out who I was. And finally, I just said, hold on a second, because they were putting documents for me. I said, listen, you got to understand something. I said, I grew up in the projects. I just declared bankruptcy because I just declared bankruptcy. I'm dead broke. These guys offered me a job. At the time, by the way, it was only $65,000 a year. I go, so I didn't care what their problems were. And by the way, I didn't know any of their problems until I became their lawyer, right?
Sure.
And then that's when they were like, oh shit, okay, well, we got nothing else for you, A woman in the grand jury clapped. I'm not kidding. She clapped. And I did have a lawyer because I had to get a lawyer. He says, Mike, I've been practicing, law for 30 something years, because we all had to get on. He says, I've never heard of that happening before, So it was such an amazing experience as a young lawyer because I dealt with every government agency, 3-letter, including the FBI, including, the DEA. The DEA. I mean, what? The DEA? Like what? So it was. I should write a book about that someday.
You absolutely should. Folks, this is Mike Alden. We are Infinity X. This is compelling audio here. I mean, unbelievable. The story of the attorney, the megapreneur. And I mean, you want to talk about trial by fire, folks, and getting your feet wet. And Mike, what I like so much about you is just your authenticity, and your transparency. And, I wouldn't be shocked, by the way, if you told me that a couple of those grand jurors, the people in the grand jury actually bought cars from you too, because, I sure as hell will. But folks, if you have a question for Mike, please put it in the chat. Again, you can find him at Mike Alden 2012 on Instagram, Mike Alden YouTube, and the Alden Report podcast. And so, Mike, as you're starting to scale forward, though, in your law career, right? When did you identify that you maybe wanted to break away from practicing full-time law and start to pursue other business ventures?
Yeah, like I said, I've always been an entrepreneur, right? And so when I learned something, and when I start to the business that I was working for, they were selling dietary supplements, and so I'm a big dude, as you can tell. I've always been this size, pretty much. I mean, I could probably stand to lose 30 pounds. I keep saying 20; it's probably not 30. But I've always been a big guy. I've always taken supplements. People used to accuse me of doing steroids and stuff. I'm like, dude, I don't have abs. I'm not ripped. Like, you don't know anything about steroids. But anyway, but I was always taking supplements and shit that people didn't even know about. I mean, I was taking ginseng before anyone knew what it was, and all this stuff. And so this company was selling supplements. And so I instantly, loved it because it was my thing. And, eventually that big lawsuit that I was talking about eventually came to an end, where it ultimately put the company out of business. And so I knew that, that I wasn't going to be able to go work at a big law firm, although I probably could have if I had really tried to, but I just didn't want to because of who I am, because I've had people tell me, hey, Mike, you're a lawyer. You need to start acting like it. Well, yeah, when I'm in federal court wearing a suit and everything else, I'm not dropping F-bombs and doing weird shit. But at the same time, I'm a bit of a different person than most lawyers. In fact, that a lot of lawyers are just they have a bad name for a reason, right? And they like to one up you and try and even show you that they're smarter than you and things like that. And that's just not who I am. And I don't think I really wanted to be in that environment. So when the company ultimately went out of business, I said, I can do what they were doing, but I can do it better and cleaner. And let me tell you this, again, I don't know how many times I said this in public. I started my company Blue Vase in 2008, and at the time was the worst economy in the history of the world up until now. And I got a FedEx from the FTC on my desk, and I open it up and it says, this is in reference to the infomercial in which you appear as Michael Alden. Michael Alden is my pen name, right? And so I was like, holy shit. And by the way, the lawyer who sent it, I was in depositions with, right? Like I was defending. And I'm like, well, of course they know me, but I was like, are they going to tell me that by using a pen name, which everybody does on TV, is somehow deceptive? That's where I thought the letter was going. It wasn't. They were just letting me know that, hey, we're watching you. I was like, all right, cool. You know what I mean? You know who I am. You stop by and visit it anytime you want. And by the way, federal marshals and shit were coming through my doors all the time when I first started, because that case I was talking about was still going on. So I started that business in 2008, selling dietary supplements via infomercial, where I then became the host. So this area that I'm sitting in, for those that are watching, This is a sound studio, although the sound probably not the best because my microphone's not working, but we'll do it.
That's not it.
but behind me is a television studio, which is even now somewhat obsolete. Like everybody has, people have television studios in their bedrooms now, right? So we built this company out to do direct response advertisements, long form infomercials, interview style infomercials. And that's really kind of what started, I shot my first infomercial in Gloucester, Massachusetts, it cost $6,000. It was, I was pale, he was red, the backdrop you could see the floor. They had what we call jump cuts, like everything from a cinematography standpoint sucked. But here's the thing, I talk about this a lot with people. It's a little bit of a secret. So if you're listening right now, I'll just say it, is that, people who are critics of the way things look, the one thing that they don't look at enough is the content. The quality of the production's important, but it's secondary if the message sucks.
Amen. Amen. Unbelievable. Folks, we are Infinity X. This is Mike Alden. If you have a question for Mike, please put it into the chat. And so you launched the first infomercial. And by the way, Jade, I'll get to you in just 1 second. I see that question up there. So you launched the infomercial, right? You launched the company. What happens next?
Yeah, I mean, so the first infomercial we did that we spent $6,000 generated close to $200 million in revenue.
Whoa. Rewind that back here, folks. Did you just hear what he just said? He invested $6,000 into his business and the ROI was what?
200 million.
And
by the way, and that's not, and there's a lot of people that flex and stuff, and especially like I'm pretty big on, well, I guess I'm not that big, but I'm pretty active on Clubhouse. And I try to be as active as I can on social media. A lot of people, look, we're marketers. I'm a marketer. There's smoke and mirrors to almost everybody, including me. But you could tell just from who I am that I am pretty authentic. And so when I use numbers like that, it might be 180. Okay, so I round it up. But either way, hundreds of millions of dollars, and that's verifiable. It's easy to prove that these infomercials generated. Here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing about it, though, is that, I'm 47 now. By the way, I'm going to start telling people I'm 42. So for those watching, I'm 40, but I'm just going to back up. So I just hate saying I'm
38.
Yeah. But when I started, 13 years ago, I remember that one of the first times where I've told this story before. I had a guy, I didn't know where he came from. All of a sudden he reached out to me and he told me that I owed him $750,000. I didn't know who this guy was. I'm like, who are you? He goes, well, I'm the silent partner of this guy. And his name's Charles Parisi, the guy that reached out to me. He's from Brooklyn. He's got a bit of a, weird vibe to him. He shows up to my office. He's all tan, rocking a suit, very calm. And he tells me that he's never lost money in any deal he's ever been in. And he's not going to start with me. And I was like, all right. And he says he wants to audit me. So he audits me. And it was like September, October. And at that time, we had done like 33 million in revenue, right? And he says, it was early on. It's like 2010 or 11 or something like that. Yep. And he says, congratulations. Like you, I also grew up in the projects. It's an amazing thing what you've done. Most people will never even come close to that, even in the future. It's awesome. He's like, you should be proud of yourself. He said, but what if I told you lost 2 million? And what if I told you, if you cut your revenue in half, you could keep 2 million, which one would you choose? And I joke, well, I don't know, it's kind of cool to say 33 million. I said, we'll probably end up doing 40 this year, And he's like, yeah, but you're losing money, And so I learned that at a young age as an entrepreneur, that the size of the business and the millions, it sounds cool. And I'm always going to say it because it is kind of cool. But here's the thing is I didn't keep most of it, right? And I made huge mistakes by losing. I mean, when he was auditing me, we were losing 300,000 a week.
Oh, wow.
And I just didn't see it because I didn't have accountants and, I did, but I didn't have them on staff. And, so I just made a lot of mistakes like that, in business. And you know what? A lot of entrepreneurs do. And Charles Parisi, he's a great friend of mine now. I paid him back, by the way, because I think I had to.
Yeah. Right.
Took me a little bit of time. And he charged me interest, and we're good friends now. I should go back to him. But So yeah, it's that's kind of how it all started. So yeah, when you talk about these big numbers, that was just one infomercial. We had several others that have done huge numbers too. But the big mistake that I made is I just didn't keep enough, not only for myself, but even just for like a rainy day.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question that Jade put into the chat that I can kind of play with as well in this space, Mike, because I think, it's going to talk about trajectory here. And she says, what advice would you give to someone who is trying to become like you? And I love that question, but also I would build off of that question and say, Mike, looking back, right. Obviously Charles gave you hella good advice, right. As you accelerated, but what were some areas where, I mean, because 300,000 a week, that's a hefty number, right? So what were some areas, if you could go back, rewind the clock and pivot and do things differently, would you have focused on to kind of capture back some of that wealth and not make the same mistake twice?
Yeah, it's really interesting too. And I'm a lawyer, and I understand the law, and I understand how to use the law to my advantage. And I also understand how to use the English language to my advantage. But I didn't take some of my own advice, right? And so look, not my first house, but I guess my kind of first house, starter house or what have you. So $350,000 house in Bradford, Massachusetts, which is close to New Hampshire. It's Haverhill, Mass. It's not a really nice area, but it's a nice neighborhood.
Sure.
And I when I bought that house, we put it in a trust. And people were like, a $300,000 house? Like, why would you, like, $350,000 house? Why would you do that? My stepfather, who was a mechanic, not a learned man, not an educated guy, didn't graduate high school. I remember when I got married, he said, Mike, you should have a prenuptial agreement. This guy, I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. I just declared bankruptcy. I didn't have anything. My ex-wife was the one making the money, but he was right. And so one of the big mistakes that I made back then was I was preparing for success, but I didn't prepare enough. In other words, there are things that you can put in place in your personal life and in your business life now that might seem like a lot of money. Like you might have to spend, I don't know, a couple $1,000s or what have you with an attorney, like to maybe set up an LLC or put together, an irrevocable trust, or do these things that sound complicated when they're really not, even though you're not doing big things yet. If you have those in place now, so that when you're successful later, that's when it's really going to pay off. And that was, again, a big mistake that I made, back then. I kind of did it. I just didn't do quite enough because, again, it was a $350,000 house, and it was like no big deal. I mean, we talk about insurance, life insurance, right? So again, I'm 42. I was 47. I look at this. I'm going back.
No, you're actually 41. You're going backwards.
By the time I'm done, I'll be in my 20s. So, with people, they don't think about those things. They don't think about life insurance. They don't think about even health insurance. Like, that's our thing. So they because they don't have a lot yet, but it's really simple to put things in place to prepare for your future success. So my old self, I would say, hey, man, you know what you're doing. You took wills and trusts in law school. It was one of the toughest classes. You understand this stuff. It's actually not that complicated. Put that stuff in place now so that in the future you can benefit from it, right? And then also the other part is unearned revenue or unearned income. I mean, I knew this then, but it's really hard not to kind of like live like a baller when you're doing 50, 60 million a year. It's just hard not to. So you'd buy things that you probably shouldn't, travel first class when I probably shouldn't, stay in hotels in Vegas that are $2,000 a night. It's cool, but even back then, social media really wasn't what. And so like I didn't even get any value out of that. Okay, you know what I mean? It's just like, all right, yeah, I'm staying at the Wynn in this sick hotel, and it's awesome, and I love the bathtub because I like taking tubbies, but but none of that. But it's like, who cares?
Right.
I just blew all that money. I wish I had it back.
Blew off your balance sheet. You can't recapture it. Yeah. Folks, we are Infinity X, stage and microphone for human excellence. We're joined tonight by Mike Alden, who's had just an unbelievable, fascinating story of trials and tribulations to massive, massive success in the supplement world, infomercials. You can catch him on social media at Mike Alden YouTube, Mike Alden 2012 on Instagram, and the Alden Report podcast. And Mike, with that in mind, as you continue to experience astronomical success, there were through the decade of the 2000s through 2008, now into where we are now. When did social start to really become a avid part of who you are and what you're doing, between podcasting and putting out the presence and really kind of leveraging your influence?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I'm behind. Actually, I know I am, because when I was in law school, guys like Gary Vee and Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez, were out there already selling, right? And they were out there already kind of building their brand. And then when I was building my business, the reason why my handles are Mike Alden 2012, because that's when I decided I was going to do something on social media, and I didn't want to. And honestly, I'm not even a big fan of it. I don't. It's a weird, necessary evil now in this world that we're living in. If you don't, then you're not relevant, right? And if you don't, then you can't grow your business. And, believe it or not, I'm somewhat introverted. And so I struggle with all right, well, I got to create a post now, and I have to put this thing out there, and I got to have some guy edit it, and I got to, I got to have say something that's, I don't know, of value, right? But if you actually look at my Instagram, and a lot of people would criticize it, I'm posting stuff with my dogs and whatever, because I'm just I care, but not that much. It's weird. If I can help people, it's usually through my books. That's usually this help people. And I'll talk about things that I think are important, that have had an impact on me, and I'll try to just push it out there. And maybe it does help somebody, but it wasn't until 2012 where I decided, all right, well, I have to do this. And it's it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's Facebook, it's Snapchat, now it's TikTok. I'm on TikTok, but I don't really do much on it. And I do feel like I'm behind, but I also feel like that the things I have to say and the things that I've done are pretty cool, and it is authentic and it is real. Whereas most of the stuff out there, and it's this whole fake it till you make it culture that's out there. These 20-somethings that are on Instagram that are teaching people how to be successful, and they've never been successful at anything in their lives.
Never had a bad market, any of those things.
Being successful at showing other people how to be successful.
Sure.
And so to me, that's just bizarre. Why would you want to learn from some guy who's teaching you a course that he bought from someone else for $9.97, and now he's charging you the same thing, and all he's doing is regurgitating what he taught from someone else who was also somebody who never really experienced any success. And by the way, I know almost all of them personally, and I don't really associate with them because they're all bullshit artists.
Right. We are Infinity X, stage and microphone hosts. This is Mike Alden. So, Mike, what led you to the insurance industry? I'm curious.
Yeah, so it's a crazy story that ties back to infomercials.
Yep.
So we've been selling health and wellness products, dietary supplements. We've been very successful in selling books, not only my books, but others. We've literally sold millions of books. A lot of them have been in the health and wellness space. And so I was on Clubhouse, actually. Clubhouse, by the way, changed my life. I talk a lot about it. I think people should be active on it. It's changing, but when I first got involved a year and a half ago, it was such an amazing opportunity, and I absolutely loved it. And I had a guy, his name is Jeff the Entrepreneur. He's going to love that I just mentioned him, right? And so he says to me, hey, Mike, Ed Milet, you probably know Ed Milet. Ed Milet has this organization, and he's recruiting. He had a 5-year non-compete. He sold his business, but now he's getting back into what's called World Financial Group, and he's looking to hire, life insurance agents. Would you be interested? And I was in a way, kind of insulted. And then I was like, well, how are you guys getting your leads? I don't know. Well, I said, here's what we'll do. I said, why don't I interview Ed Milet on an infomercial? And, by the way, we did Dean Graziosi's infomercial, How to Be a Real Estate Millionaire. So we've done some big biz op shows too, right? And so I was like, why don't I interview Ed about this opportunity, and we'll send calls, or we'll send them to a website to generate leads for people. Let's do that. I don't really know, Ed. I'm just, so it started to get me. Oh, so then he gets me on, like, essentially like a recruiting call with some guy, and he starts showing me the numbers. And I was like, it was crazy, because when I was in law school, I got interviewed by Northwestern Mutual Financial 17 years ago, and they guaranteed, I don't know if they still do it anymore, but they did, and maybe I was special, I don't think so, but they guaranteed me $150,000 a year. That wasn't my salary, but that's what they guaranteed that I would make in that year, whether I made it or not, right?
Right.
And I was like, this isn't real. Like, this doesn't make sense. By the way, I interviewed 4 times with them. 3 times. The 4th time they wanted me to come back. I didn't have another suit. I told them I'm not coming back. They did offer me the job, but it wasn't real. It wasn't for me. So then Jeff starts showing me the numbers, and I have life insurance, and I know what it can do for you, and how important it is, especially in your family. So I said, hey, it didn't work out with the Ed Milet thing. He probably didn't even reach out to him. I reached out to my people, and I said, does anybody know anybody in the insurance space, whether it be health insurance, life insurance? What about solar, or any sort of lead gen type thing? Because I'm great at interviewing people. It's what I've been doing for the past 12 years. I mean, it's different now, but I've been on television for the past 12 years, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, like all over North America, interviewing people. It's what I do, right? I don't look like this. I'm wearing a suit, and so somebody responded and said, yeah, I know a guy. And here's the crazy thing. That guy was a guy that I pitched 13 years ago. I went down to his call center and pitched him to do a long form infomercial on health insurance. He was running short form infomercials and health insurance. Well, he exited that company, and he's looking for something new. And he said, Mike, let's just do it all over again, and I'll do it with you. And that's it. And that's how it started. And that was I don't know, 6 months ago or so.
Unbelievable, folks. Folks, this is, you got to pay attention to what Mike Alden is up to, boy. I'll tell you, this is insane trajectory. And Mike, can I play in this space for a couple of minutes? Because I want to, I want to talk a little bit about ecosystems, right? And I think the power, I'll call it the power of the stage and the microphone, and the power of introducing one person to another person, and how 1 + 1, my friend Sean Callaghan says 1 + 1 = a trillion, and so we, here at Epic Financial Strategies, which is the company that was founded by my partner, Rob Gill. We've developed partnerships, one in particular with a guy by the name of Chris Crone, who have developed I'll call it a marketing system, because I think you're aware of this as well. Marketing in the financial services arena is unbelievably antiquated, and it's old school, and they're telling, hey, when you were at Northwestern Mutual, they definitely wanted you to do something called a Project 200, guaranteed. Hey, give me 200 of the, people, your friends and family and best friends and people that you sat next to in college, right?
Your warm market. Yeah.
Your warm market. Absolutely. And, that worked once upon a time. In my opinion, it's a challenge to make it work now. But we've identified a method in which we, through partnership with other influencers, right, in social media verticals, have created a system where people are requesting consultation with us, and are coming conditioned to want to talk about the living benefits of what life insurance can do. Right. And, as a business owner, you're very, very aware of this. You can use life insurance as leverage. You can reinvest it back into your business, create multiple rates of return. But we, through this partnership and through development of these ecosystems, we went from, I would call it, 8 to 10 qualified sales appointments on a month-over-month basis, to this particular month, we're going to receive in a little bit over 2,000 requests for appointment. And it's been unbelievable growth and trajectory, which I would love to chew your ear on a little bit, maybe post this call. But as it's continued to, as it continues to scale and it continues to grow, we're constantly thinking about innovation, right? New ways that we can innovate, how we're putting our brand out there, how we're putting content out, and really kind of increasing the size of our stage and our microphone, right? And so as you look to build and scale and continue to grow, what are some, and it's not necessarily just insurance, right? But it's anything, anything business development wise or entrepreneurial. What would you suggest are things that our listeners should be focused on to expand? And you mentioned Clubhouse. I want to touch on that a little bit as well. But what are some platforms or strategies that people can use to expand their outreach of their message? Because the hardest part, especially in sales, is getting qualified conversations, right? And so what are some tactics that you see that are relevant now, maybe that people aren't necessarily thinking about?
This right here. I mean, this is it. I mean, this very medium than what you and I are communicating on, and podcast / streaming is a beautiful thing. The barrier of entry is essentially zero. I mean, I talked about the production quality. I mean, you have a great set and the microphone, the sound, and everything, and I'm sure you probably even have a team involved. But people don't realize is that you don't need all that stuff. I mean, I did a podcast once. I did a podcast once at an airport. You can hear stuff in the background. I just had the headphones, but but I've done podcasts in my car,
Sure.
and because it just because of timing, it just wasn't Tim. Do you know what Tim Story is? I interviewed Tim Story in my car. Like, Tim Story's been on Oprah. He's friends with Oprah. The guy's a baller, right?
Yep.
And because I wasn't going to miss my daughter's soccer game, I was going to do it in the car. He loved it, by the way. He thought it was amazing. And I was just going to do the audio because I didn't want him to know I was in my car. And he's like, no, you got to turn the video on. Like, this thing's awesome. So I think that this is it right here. The barrier of entry is so low. And so a lot of people would think, and this is kind of like, this is a challenge a lot of people have with social media. And you see guys like Gary Vee, just post content. Well, people don't have content. I don't think people are that interesting. I don't think most people's lives are that interesting, including mine. And so, but what a great thing to do is doing exactly what you're doing and exactly what I'm doing is start a podcast and interview interesting people. Now, then people would say, well, geez, I don't know who to interview. Listen, my first interviews on my podcast, Charles Parisi, by the way, was the one who told me to start my podcast because I got all this equipment in here. It's not working. But anyway, he says, look, start a podcast. This is 8 years ago. We have more than 176. It's just we rebooted it, and that's where we're at now. But my first interviews were just people in this building in my hometown. I interviewed my barber. It's funny. Grant Cardone was busting my balls. I've had him on twice. And I interviewed my barber years ago, and then Grant came on after, and he goes, I hope we do a better job than your barber. Well, he didn't my barber. My barber's been in business for 40 years, and he's got a lot to say, and he's an interesting guy. And so I would say to the people listening right now, start a podcast, interview people. If you don't have anything to say, that's okay. Interview people. You guys reached out to me through like an agency, but a lot of times people, you just send them a DM and just ask. Hey, can you come on my podcast? And I've had some of the biggest names in the world in business on my podcast, and it all started with just me asking. So I would say do that. Start a podcast to continue. And here's the other thing. You had mentioned connections. Like my next book is titled Connection Capital. People talk about your network as being your net worth. I think there's a disconnect there. Your network is not necessarily your net worth. It's your connections that truly build your capital. And when I say connections, I mean a true, authentic connection with people, because I have a massive network like Grant Cardone and all these other people. I'm not like besties with these people, so I don't have like a strong connection with them, but I do have strong connections with so many people because I'm interested in their lives. I'm interested in what they're doing. So your network is important, but your connections are so much more important because, like you said, that one can turn into a trillion. And in fact, my book, Connection Capital, I tell a story about one of the first guys that I met in the direct response space. He gave me his business card. I was at a free event because we couldn't afford it, and he gave me his business card. And that guy changed my life. And not only changed my life, but he changed thousands of people's lives as a result of that one interaction. So start a podcast. And the reason why I was telling you that whole connection thing is because I've developed, and I have a feeling it's going to be a great one with you, amazing connections with people as a result of the podcast. Yes. I've become great friends with people that I would have never been able to connect with, but for the fact that I had something to offer them. I had a podcast that I wanted to have them on. We could create some cool content. And by the way, when I first started, I had a list of like 10 questions and it sucked. Hey, you know, what makes you successful or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And but now it's a little bit different. I just basically go to, you know, kind of a more kind of interview style where it's very, very kind of conversational. So start a podcast. I would tell anybody and everybody to do that.
Unbelievable. Folks, this is Mike Alden. We are Infinity X, stage and microphone for human excellence. Start a podcast. Get your brand out there. It's free marketing. And by the way, Gary Rand, I love what you're saying. High value, authenticity, your contacts are my currency. I love that, Gary. You're the man yourself, brother. Thank you so much for the comments in the chat. And hey, let's talk about Clubhouse real quick, because Clubhouse is almost like a free podcast to a degree. You know, I mean, but how? I keep getting people, saying, Clubhouse was a fad. Clubhouse is dead. Clubhouse is like, you get lost in it. It's not worth your time. I'm hearing something completely different from you, Mike. So what's your take on that?
Clubhouse changed my life. So look, in 2014, I got involved in cryptocurrency. I wrote a book about it. I built out a mining operation. I got involved in cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. One, because I was just interested in it, but when I really started to see the impact that it could have on the world and what it could do for people, then I really started talking about it on my private social media pages, you know, Facebook or what have you. And it was amazing what happened. So many people started coming, hey, Mike, I want to get involved. And so I really started to scream from the rooftops about cryptocurrency, not because of necessarily the money-making aspect of it, because that is a big part of it, but because of the access that anybody could get. See, at the time when I got involved, I think Bitcoin was at like 3,000, right? And even then it was such a big number. And most people just thought it was like out of their reach. But what they didn't realize is you could buy $1 in Bitcoin and just start to learn and start to build on, compound on that. So I was screaming about that from the rooftops, get involved. And a lot of people did. And actually I have some friends that made more money than I did. And then the other thing I screamed about in my career is transcendental meditation. I don't care if you follow any form of meditation. My book, Ask More, Get More, in 2014, I was talking about mental health. I go to a therapist. I've been going to one my whole life. Now it's like the thing because of COVID and everybody's fucked up. And as they rightfully so, I get it, right? But now we're talking about it, okay? And I'm not trying to put myself as like some sort of visionary or anything, but I've been talking about it for a long time because I don't really care if people think, oh, he goes out there. Yeah, you know what? People got to, you know, talk through stuff. So I started screaming about that, saying how impactful it was in my life. And so many people have, look, I paid for 25 of my employees. I put my parents on it. Meditation is such an amazing, that thing. The third thing in my career that I screamed about was Clubhouse, because of the access that you still can get on Clubhouse. You know, when you're sitting in a room and Elon Musk pops into the room and you're there and you have the possibility to truly interact with him, to use celebrities, like I was in a room having a conversation with MC Hammer, Snoop Dogg, and Paris Hilton about this thing that everybody knows about now. It's called an NFT, right? This was a long time ago when we were talking about this. So Clubhouse gives you access, and it does give you a platform just like podcasts do. And I would say to anybody who wants to create connections and they want to get access to people, get on Clubhouse. Get involved in it. Is it changed? Absolutely. Is it different? Yeah. Is it more of like kind of like entertainment type stuff? Yeah. I mean, are there things that I don't like about it? Yeah, all that stuff. However, if you're just starting out and you want to meet people, like for instance, like Grant Cardone, right? Grant Cardone is all over Clubhouse. I don't know why he's there all the time. I mean, he's worth a couple $100 million and he's got billions under management. He's there all the time for a reason. And the reason why he's there is because his people are there. Right. And I say, I don't know why, but I really know why he's there, because his people are there. You know, John Ledger, the former CEO of T-Mobile. I now have a relationship with him as a result. I didn't know who John Ledger was. He probably didn't know who I was either. OK, but, the guy's worth a couple $100 million and built, he was a big part of T-Mobile's success. And so he's not. And there's a lot of other people that you've never even heard of that are doing big things that can help you. And so for me, I've developed true, authentic relationships very quickly. And here's why. Because on Clubhouse, it's an audio only app, right? So, women don't have to worry about putting on makeup. And I was just talking to Forbes Riley, who's a good friend of mine. She's like, Mike, I love Clubhouse because I can just roll out of bed. I don't have to do my hair. I don't have to worry about that stuff. Elena Cardone talked about the same thing. And it's just a great resource for people. And so is it dead? I don't know. You got Spotify with Green Room, they just changed it, and you got Twitter Spaces and all these other things. There's a reason why all these other companies are following suit, because it is impactful. So I would say get on Clubhouse and get active.
Unbelievable, folks. Get back on the Clubhouse. Get back on the train. The train hasn't stopped moving. You just have to figure out what stop you want to get on, right? And be intentional with how you market, folks. Be intentional with how you approach things like Clubhouse. Be intentional with the content that you're putting out there on social media. Be intentional with the content and the people that you're interviewing on your podcasts, right? Stage and microphone. Mike, I could not sing that louder, brother. You're a mega power, man. I am so blown away with your story of challenges growing up, with putting yourself through law school, selling 2 cars I'll never forget that story, by the way. I think that's one of the greatest stories I've ever heard in my entire life. But, building out a multi-million dollar brand, experiencing unbelievable highs, recognizing lows, growing from those, becoming an accomplished author, again, published in, Wall Street Journal and USA Today, accomplished podcaster. You're up to amazing things. Where can people, obviously they can follow you on Instagram, right? They can follow you on YouTube, but where can people get more information about what Mike Alden's up to and how they might be able to network and, or, follow in your footsteps? Where can they get access to you?
Yeah, I mean, I am pretty active on Instagram, at Mike Alden 2012. You just go to mikealden.com as well. If you hit me up on Instagram, look, I am pretty active on Clubhouse. I'm there very intentionally on Clubhouse. I help other authors with their books, and so I have a club called Bestseller Secrets. The world is changing on Clubhouse, so I'm not as active as I used to be. But check me out on Clubhouse at Mike Alden. Send me a DM. I don't have a team of people that are responding to stuff. I'm the one who responds to stuff. And if you have a question, if you need help with something, I respond to everything because I'm not getting thousands of them all the time. So it's just at Mike Alden 2012. And by the way, listen, people usually say this after the fact. To me, I just to be honest with people, say, hey, did a great job, dude. You're really good. I'm just letting you know, you're really good.
Wow. Dude, Mike, listen, thank you, brother. I'm freaking honored that, and I see you in my future. Quite frankly, I mean, I really do, man. I'm super excited. I will be one of those DMs in Instagram, talking about some ways that we might be able to co-create together, because your brain is like a microchip, and your entrepreneurial spirit is just it's really exciting. And I think we're doing some business verticals that you might be interested in as well. So, Mike, I can't thank you enough for spending this hour flew by, folks. I usually finish up at about 8:59. It's 8:03. I could go to 8:30. This hour has just flown by in the blink of an eye. And again, We Are Infinity X, folks. Replay at weareinfinityx.com. We Are Infinity X, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, iTunes. And Mike, again, it's just been an absolute honor to share a stage with you for the last hour, man. You are a beast, and I really appreciate you and everything that you're up to, brother.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Folks, We Are Infinity X. Until next time, we're going to say good evening, good night.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, David. You guys,
you're very welcome, Gary.
Every time.